Okay, so a pleasant day to everyone. So welcome back. Today we are going to talk about modules 6 and 7 of English for academic and professional purposes. So for today we are going to talk about writing reaction paper and the critical approaches in writing a critique. So credits to the development team of the modules specifically to the writer, Miss Elisa O. Babao, and Arveline B. Manalang, and to the rest of the development team, specifically to the schools division of Pampanga. So let's start with module 6. Critical approaches in writing a critique. Okay. So, medyo critical, okay? Mabigat ang dating, okay? So for this module, at the end of this module, you are expected to identify critical approaches in writing a critique using formalism, feminism, and other literary theories or critical theories. Use critical approaches in writing a critique and formulate a critique paper using these critical approaches in writing, such as the given critical theories. So for this one, you could just answer them in your respective portfolios, okay? So give the meaning of the following words. So critique, reaction, opinion, judgment, and approach. But most of the terms here, as I've mentioned, okay, they denote a negative emotion, or they tend to have a negative stigma on people, which we should correct at the end of this lesson. Okay? So for last lesson 6, critical approaches in writing a critique. Okay? So for example, this. How do we study literature? How do viewpoint and bias affect our perception of reality? So meron tayong parang ano dito, cartoon, okay? Comic. You most of all can't handle the truth. Okay? He is pertaining to the devil, something like that. Okay? So there's the concept of truth, there's the concept of viewpoints, biases, and realities. But when we're talking about literary pieces and texts, okay, yes, of course, we have our truth, but we are entitled to our viewpoints, okay, and opinions as long as they are backed up with evidence and proof, okay? So, for example, here, before we move on to the discussion, okay, here are the questions that we could ponder on. What are the benefits of each form of criticism? Okay? So, bakit kailangan daw ng criticism at ano yung benefit? Okay? So, you could answer that. But technically, when we're talking about this, criticism could help you identify your strengths and your weaknesses. And it could help you improve as an individual, as a writer, okay, as an author, okay? What are the problems with each form? Okay, di ba yun nga yung nabanggit na we have various forms of criticism. I believe that problems would start with how people see criticism, okay? And then how the writer would also come up with the form of criticism. And then is there a right or wrong form? Well, for me, it depends on the way of proving the claim or the manner of presenting evidence. Okay, if there's sufficient evidence, then you could be believable. You could have a stronger claim. Okay, can the mode of criticism alter the entire meaning of the text? Not really alter, but those different modes, literary theories, they present a way for you to see things. Parang, this is a masterpiece. And then you use different lenses, the theories. And from using those theories, you get to see every detail of that masterpiece. I could recall a particular folktale, I guess, the blind men who were trying to touch an elephant, but they're touching different parts of the elephant, and each were claiming their own truth. But in fact, all of the things that they were saying were practically correct. Okay, they were practically, all of them were practically right. Okay, why? Because they were touching different sides, and critical theories could also give you the same the same treatment towards a particular text. It would give you a different lens, a different way to see a particular text. Okay, so let's get to it. What is it? Okay? A critique is a careful analysis of an argument to determine what is said, how well the points are made, what assumptions underlie the argument, what issues are overlooked, and what implications are drawn from the observations. So ang critique daw, kapag sinabi mong analysis, it is the breaking down of its elements. So kung may binabasa kang text, you're breaking it down to its parts. So we could try the introduction. Titignan mo muna kung sino yung nagsulat, ano yung title, ano yung qualifications ng author, how well it was written. You're practically like tearing it apart to see how each part works, okay? Then you would look at how well the points are made. Are the points valid? Are the assumptions valid? Are they well presented? At meron ba siyang ebidensya sa bawat implications and claims na binibigay niya? Okay? So it is a systematic yet personal response and evaluation of what you read. Okay? So it is therefore important that you understand what you critique about. So parang hindi ka naman pwede mag-comment tungkol sa isang bagay na hindi mo naman alam. And what approach will be necessary to come up with a better view. So parang you consider this. If you have a phone, okay, then you were asked to critique a phone, your perspective would be different if you would be critiquing a phone as a cell phone technician. You would also be critiquing a phone differently if you would be critiquing it from the perspective of a software developer or from a perspective of a software engineer. And if you're critiquing it as an artist, iba din naman ang take mo. Okay? So each field or role would have a different way on presenting a review. Okay? So for example, after watching a movie or reading a story, ang dami mong gusto sabihin. So for sure, during the pre-pandemic era, pre-pandemic period, you would know that you would recall how you and your friends manonood kayo ng movie, pinanood niyo yung movie sabay-sabay, paglabas niyo yun pa rin ang pinag-uusapan niyo. Because you have lots of things to talk about the particular movie. And some would have different opinions about it. Pwedeng may positive, ang ganda ng pagkaka-portray ng role, while others might have a different thing. Okay? You would comment on how the actors or actresses played their role. Okay? So, ganitong paraan nagkakaroon tayo ng mga iba't ibang approaches sa pagko-comment, and the same goes with critiquing a paper. Okay. So, practically, these critical approaches are just a few. You could have more. Like, madami pa. But, technically, in this module, ito yung binigay sa atin. So, let's have an overview. Critical approaches in writing a critique. So, for formalist criticism, wag matakot sa isim-isim, ha? I know nakakatakot, pero wag matakot, okay? So, for formalist criticism, okay, so formalist. So, we focus on the form. So, ang ina-analyze natin kapag sa formalist criticism is yung formal features ng text, okay? Hindi mo tinitignan yung profile, yung history, yung personality, yung biography ng author or ng creator, pero nag-focus ka lang dun sa text. Okay? You try to examine the form of work as a whole and the form of each individual part of the text if they make an organic, if there's organic unity. Okay? So you consider all the parts, the element like the character, settings, tone, diction, point of view, etc. And how they work together, again, dun sa nabanggit ko, para buo yung text. Okay? And then after analyzing each part, yung critique, magde-describe siya on how each work together. Okay? So, ayun, formalist criticism. We also have what they call the new criticism. At some point, it is like formalist. You focus on the text itself. Okay? Meron pang specific na type ng formalist. kasi two types yan. You have the American formalism and the Russian formalism. But then again, let's just take what is given in the book. I hope I explained this well because this is my master's degree. So, my goodness. Okay, next. Biographical criticism, on the other hand, you focus on the life of the creator. So you try to align what's happening in the text with what the author has undergone in his life. Okay? So the goal of the biographical criticism is you try to understand why the author wrote what he or she wrote. Okay? Next. Historical naman, from the word itself, historical, you consider the context, social, cultural, historical, intellectual context surrounding the text when it was written. Okay, so this criticism would consider the historical evidence and the context, kung kailan naisulat ang work, as well as yung facts tungkol sa buhay ni author and other circumstances during that time. So one would assume that this kind of criticism, using this kind of criticism, that the text was made out of all of those historical circumstances, out of the context per se. Okay? So, gender criticism, on the other hand, examines how sexual identity influences the creation and reception of the subject. So, kumbaga, we're taking gender as is, yung walang female or male, to be specific, but gender per se. So it examines how the identity of an individual in terms of sex would influence the creation of the text, how this could be made sense, how could this be evaluated. So literature is timeless. So gender criticism could influence the way society views gender differences. Kaso yun nga, consider natin, magandang point of view na kuhanin dito is, consider mo din kailan na isulat yung gawa, yung text, and how are genders taken during that time. So it also examines how an author may have influenced gender perception through work of literature, or kung paano nila pinapresent ang gender during that time. Okay? Psychological criticism, on the other hand, so we're like considering psychoanalysis here, but we are going to use what was employed in the module. Psychological criticism investigates the creative process of the artist and the nature of the literary genius. So ito, ina-analyze natin yung author's unintended message. But if we're gonna take it from the psychoanalytical criticism, we're looking at the unconscious aspect of the work and even of the author. Okay? So, pwede rin dun sa mga characters mismo lalabas yung unconscious side. Ito yung sa mga dreams, yung Freudian concepts, Freud, like the Oedipus and the Oedipus complex, the ego, superego, etc. Okay? And then sociological criticism studies the cultural, economic, and political relationship ng subject pati ng creator. So yung ginawa niya, pati yung ginawa niya, pati yung gumawa, okay? Yung relationship in terms of cultural, economic, at saka political. Okay? Okay, so for the activities here, you would have to read the excerpt. So practically, this is about Les Miserables. This is a classic. So you would have to parang analyze it, critique it using a formalist approach. So let me help you. So when we're talking about a formalist approach, you focus on the form, not on the author. Hindi mo titingnan yung buhay ni Victor Hugo, but on the elements of the selection. So pwede kayong mag-Google at some point on the elements. But then again, you consider who is the main character. You consider the theme. What are the symbolisms? May symbolism ba? Pero yung kumbaga yung ideya kasi ng storya is there's this Jean Valjean na parang nakulong siya, may parole siya, and then he he was there was the entire scenery of poverty at some point, and another character comes in like Fantine, okay, who asks for money, meron siyang sick na daughter, okay, then she works as a prostitute, okay, and then kumbaga lahat ng yung ano nila yung lives nila magkakadugtong, and I remember playing this in a high school play, and eventually it leads to the revolution dun sa dulo. Basahin niyo na lang muna. But then again, there's the revolution, the current situation that they're currently in brings to life the revolution. But in simplest term, the story is about Jean Valjean, yung nakulong nga. We started, I think we started the play with look down, don't look them in the eye. And the prisoner, Jean Valjean, was even addressed as prisoner to 4601. I could still remember that. And then, nandun si Javert, Inspector Javert. So, Jean Valjean was practically in prison kasi nagnakaw siya ng tinapay para dun sa anak nung kapatid niyang may sakit, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's the idea. Now, you have to look into the elements of the story dun sa excerpt na binigay sa atin, yung synopsis, and how each of this, yung setting, yung mga characters, yung theme or message, kung may symbolism ba, okay, how these work together as one to send the meaning across. So that's how you're gonna do it. You are not going to consider what Victor Hugo had during that time. You're not gonna search on what happened during the time when this was written or published. You're not going to look into what Victor Hugo was suffering. Okay? But you're going to focus on the form. Okay, kuha? And that's how you use formalism. Okay? Tingnan mo rin yung genre, kailan nangyari yung story, and the historical, that would lean towards the historical aspect. But if you're focusing on the formalist, you just focus on the elements. Okay? So, ayan. So, I hope we're clear with that. Okay? So, kumbaga, if you're listening to a song, okay, if you're, let's think about a song. Let's say, yung mapa ba yun? Mapa ng SB19? Huwag mag-alala, ipikit ang yung mata. So if you're going to make a formalist criticism of that, you're going to focus on the rhyme, on the metaphors, on the persona, sinong kausap ng persona, sino yung audience, ano yung mga literary figures na ginamit. But you're not going to talk about kailan siya nasulat. Hindi mo rin pag-usapan yung life story ng mga artists behind that. Okay? I hope we're clear with that. Okay? So, ayan. That's just actually an overview. I'm hoping to create another video about literary approaches, critical theories, para kumbaga mas ma-unpack each. But for now, ito lang ang nire-require muna ng module, so we'll end there. Okay? So, I hope you've learned something for today. So I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.